The first thing we're going to talk about is natural versus man-made. So we'll look at natural first. The natural environment. Some elements in nature are completely natural. For example, land, water, flowers. Those are all natural pieces of environment. Now there are also man-made elements as well. Some elements are created by human beings, which are what we call man-made. For example, furniture, books, and buildings. So these are all things that have been created by man. In order for us to have the man-made items, we need to have a couple of things to put together. The first is materials. We need materials in order to create the item. We need tools to help us build or construct it. We need to have skills, or the people creating the man-made items need to have the skills necessary in order to create it. And with all three of those combined, we'll get the object. Now, let's look at that in some examples. And here's the first example. So, for example, if I have the material of clay with the tools I have for using for pottery and making it together, and with the skills I have to create pottery, create pots and ceramics, for example, how to roll the clay, how to form the clay into a pot, and so on and so forth, then with the materials, tools, and skills all together, you will get a ceramic pot or vase or anything like that. Let's look at another example. Another one is wool. Some of the materials I will need will be sheep, and the wool we get from sheep. The tools in order to turn the wool into string and thread in order to use to put it together. The skill is sewing, so someone needs to know how to run a machine that sews. And then the final man-made product is a sweater. So now we're going to take the man-made and natural and we're going to relate it to structures. So when I say structures, that could be buildings, that could be a monument, that could be a landform, something like that. So what you will see in your assignments will look something like this, talking about pre-modern and modern structures. So your job will be to go ahead and fill in these 4 slides. So the first one, we're going to add a picture of a structure that you find from your country that was made before the 1900s or pre-modern. And then you're also going to find a name of a structure that was built after the 1900s. It could be recent, within the last couple of years, but anytime after the 1900s. So you're going to just find the 2, and then you're going to do these 4 slides relating to just the 2 different structures. The next one, you'll add the tools necessary and needed, the materials, and the skills. So let's look at my example, and I'm going to share this with you as well if you want to look back to it. So here I have my pre-modern and modern structures. So the first one, I decided to do 2 different structures from Minnesota. So the first one is the Minneapolis City Hall. So I added the name and I found the picture. And the contemporary, which was built after the 1900s, is the Walker Art Center. Notice any information I found, I just put the URL in the bottom in the notes, and that helped me keep track of all my information. So let's keep going with that. So in the Minneapolis City Hall, the materials that I found that I needed were rose granite and brick. Those were the materials I needed to build that building. In the contemporary, I needed aluminum and glass. Next are the tools. So I had to research. So when I was researching in Google, I had to type in tools used for granite in 1880s, because the Minneapolis City Hall was started being built in 1889. So I had to look for some things. And so some of their tools they used was chilled or cold iron in order to break apart the granite. They had to use chains in order to lift the granite, and sand and water. And that was a tool to them because that was how it was polished. So even though these are natural materials, they still used it as a tool. In the contemporary, the Walker Art Center, they needed a furnace in order to create the glass for the glass windows. They needed also circular saws. Now the circular saws were something that was developed much later with diamond tips, helped to cut and things like that. And last but not least, the skills that were needed to build, or people had to know how to cut granite for in the Minneapolis City Hall when they were building it. They had to know how to polish granite, and they had to know how to lift granite. Those were like the main skills on how to build that building. In the contemporary, in the Walker Art Center, people had to know how to weld, since a main material was aluminum. And they had to know how to do glass molding to create the glass windows. So what I want you to do is go through this, find, research, look for materials, tools, and skills that relate to your one structure before the 1900s and the one after the 1900s. Go ahead and go.